Hi there friends, welcome back to another video on Paying It Forward. This week we're going to be talking about something in relation to Microsoft Dataverse. In my day job at Microsoft, I've been working a lot in building a data model for something we're working on at the moment. And I've been exploring all of the different types of data types inside of Dataverse, and I thought it could be a very interesting topic to share with all of you as well. Because really once you understand all the different data types that are available to you when it comes to kind of taking existing data and mapping it to Dataverse, it can be a really useful exercise. So let's dig in. All right, I'm going to start with a question, which is, for those of you out there who are familiar with Dataverse, you need to answer me, how many data types are there in Dataverse? Giving you a minute to have a go at finding the answer. But I did a little bit of counting myself, and I was able to count 25 different types of data that you can use inside of Dataverse. Let me hide my video a second so we can see those a little bit easier. So in those 25 types, there's actually 9 primary data types that you discover when you go into Microsoft Dataverse, which are as follows here: text, number, date and time, lookup, choice, currency, Autonumber, file and formula. And the plan for the session today is to basically go through each one of those, what happens when you create it, what does it look like, and so on and so from there. Let's start by looking at the Dataverse data type for text. So a single line of text is the first type of text, let's say data type, that you can choose. And the first of those is plain text, which basically stores text without any formatting. Then you have a text area, which is very similar in that it's a simple multi-line box for entering text. You have rich text, which allows for formatting, such as bolding and hyperlinks. You have email that stores email addresses and ensures a valid format. And then you have a phone number, which stores the phone number. The ticker symbol, which is used to store stock ticker symbols. And then you have a URL as well to store web addresses. The key thing about things like the email, phone number, or the ticker symbol and the URL is that they typically have some kind of formatting in them to ensure that the right kind of data is stored in them, so that the functionality of those works when it's being displayed inside of an application. Something that's key when you consider the single line of text is that there's only 4,000 characters allowed for each of those. To go a bit further, let's take a look at what this looks like inside of Dataverse. Okay, so here's the plain text, which is the first single line of text format. And when you create the column, I've created all these columns just to speed up the process. You have advanced options that you can extend here to basically make sure that the settings of what you've set up in your column is what you want it for. And in this case, if I try to do 5,000 characters, it breaks the limits of the cell, which obviously, because it's a single line of text, it only allows 4,000. But in this case, we're just going to keep 500 as what we want this one for. If we go to the next one, which is the text area, this is very, very similar in just the differences in the format. Again, you can adjust the character count that you'd want to have for this column as well. The next field that you can use is what's called the single line of rich text. You can see this one has a little bit more detail towards it, but again, it has a character count limit. And again, if I try to go too much over, it comes back with an error. This is something important to note on this particular field because it does look very similar to the multi-line rich text field when it renders, but it does have that character limit on it of 4,000 characters. The next single line of text option is email. So email, there's again, you can adjust the character count. Then we have the phone number, which is, again, you can adjust the character count. Same with the ticker symbol. You can adjust the character count. No other settings that you can really customize here. And last but not least, you have the URL, which has the same adjustment to be able to be made. I thought what would be more helpful than kind of viewing these columns like this would be to put them into an application so that we can take a look at them. So I've created a very basic form inside of a model-driven application here with all of the different single line of text fields, each of those with their 4,000 character limit. So we can basically take a look at them. Okay, so I'm in my application. I'm going to create a new record. And you can see here that the single line of text options have opened. Let's quickly fill them in. I thought what would be helpful to use as much text as possible to fit into these cells without them obviously, blowing up. So I got ChatGPT to generate me some text that we can just drop into these. So this is 4,000 characters that it's got in here. Same in the text area. Same in the single line of text. And you can see because the number of characters in this box was only 100, it's having a small issue. We've entered in a phone number. We're going to put in a ticker symbol. And we're going to put in a URL. When I save the record, you'll notice that the email address, the phone number, the ticker symbol, and the URL each have little icons at the end. This allows you with the single line of text fields to be able to, for example, create a new email to that person, call using the telephony service that you have to that number, open a bing.com money page for the Microsoft ticker symbol or whichever ticker symbol you have, or open the URL to the website that's included. What you can see perhaps here in the example of the difference between the plain text and the text area is that where the text area has multi-lines of text, contained within it, it just renders all the way over to the right in the single line of plain text box. So this kind of shows you the difference between how each of these will render. Okay, now let's have a look at the multiple lines of text. As mentioned here, the number of characters is a lot. It's 1,048,576, which blew my mind when I was doing the research for this presentation. And there is, similar to the text box option, there is both the plain text box, which allows multiple lines of unformatted text, and then there's the rich text, which again supports additional formatting options as well. But as you can see here, there's just so many characters that you can include in this. So when you're really going for kind of, let's say, qualitative data with lots of information, you probably want to be considering using multiple lines of text. As we did before with the single lines of text, let's take a look at what these look like inside of Dataverse. Okay, so we have the multiple lines of text, which, as you can see, the option here. It's currently set to a 2,000 character limit. As you saw, it takes a lot of numbers to go over, a lot of zeros to go over the total number. So you can obviously add and remove that as you would wish. The key thing is that the storage size of a plain text is going to be much lower than for rich text. So if you are kind of, considering having a large number of characters, then note that the amount of storage that would be taking in your database is obviously going to be bigger as well. I'll leave this alone and leave it how it was configured. Then you also have the rich text, which again is multiple lines of rich text, as you can see here. Again, it's the same kind of editing experience, so I think you get the idea. Let's also take a look at that in the same record we were working in before. So if I scroll down a little bit further from where we had the other text, you'll see that I'm going to take the same information and paste it within these boxes and put them in there. So what you can see is that for the rich text, you can see that there's an ability to store many other characters. And in this case, you can obviously put in formatting into the text as well. One key thing to note here is that when you have a large amount of text, I'll just make a quick example here. When you have a large amount of text like this in this plain text, but multiple lines of text, you'll notice that it's kind of quite hard to actually scroll the information that's in that box, and it can be kind of annoying trying to use the field. This is to do with the way that the data type has been selected to be presented within the application, so it's a setting there. I'll quickly show you what that looks like. So in the design for the form here, I have the plain text field, and if I select it, you'll see that on the formatting, it's formatted to be one column and one row in height. If I click use all available vertical space, then it will adjust the size of the row height based upon the amount of text that would be presented within it. So if I check this box and then publish. You'll see now that if we have multiple lines of text and we paste it into this multi-line box based on the adjustment formatting we just made, then when we save the record, it will then automatically adjust to the amount of text that's within the box. The next Dataverse data type I'd like us to look at is the number. In the number, there's a few different options. Let's go through them. The first of those is the whole number. This stores the whole number without decimals. It's useful for counting or ranking data. Then you have decimals, which of course stores numbers with decimal precision. This is useful when you're using it, for example, in storing values like currency. Then you have a float. Float is a term used in database management quite often, and it can store numbers with floating decimal precision, and it's often used for doing mathematical calculations. I've noticed in my time using it that it can be used for both whole numbers and for decimals as well, so it's very flexible in terms of the data that you can store within that. The next option is called a language code. This is used to store the code that represents a specific language. The next one is called the duration, which stores a span of time in minutes, often used to represent length of events or tasks. This is a data type that has stored values within it when it's created, and we'll look at those in a moment. And last but not least is the time zone, and this is when you would be wanting to capture time zone specific information about someone or about the record that's being created. As we did with text, let's take a look at what these look like in Dataverse. All right, so the first one we have is the whole number. The options are fairly limited, but you can change the minimum and maximum value that you'd want to have for this. For the purposes of this video, I've made the minimum value 0 and the maximum 1000, just for easy use. The next one is the decimal, which in this case is 0 and 1000, and I'm going to reduce it to 2 decimal places to use in our example. The next one is float, which is again very similar. I'm going to keep it as I've configured it here, which is that it would have 3 decimal places. The next one is the language code, which doesn't have many advanced options. The next option is the duration, which similarly doesn't have any other additional options. And last but not least, we have the time zone, which also doesn't have any additional options either. What's better than to look at how these look like in an application? So let's go back to where we were before in creating the record and have a look at how these render. Let's have a go at inputting data into the number types. So the first one is the whole number, and if I put in a number, for example, that's above the range that I'd specified, then obviously it returns an error and it wouldn't allow you to save this field with that validation error in place. So I'm just going to reduce this back down to 800. On the decimal, I'm going to put 0.52. In the float, it's going to be 800.523. On the language code, it only has the United States on mine. I've not come across yet how you change the language code, so if anyone has any advice for me on how to do that, please let me know in the comments down below. The duration is also something where I've only found the preset values that are set within the row. So you have obviously a minute, 15, 30, 45 and an hour, and then other time availability as well. But I haven't been able to find how you actually adjust the options within this. Same with the time zone. It seems like these are preset within the system, so you can't add or remove any of these. You would just keep the ones that are provided. So again, any suggestions on how to update these, please let me know in the comments down below. Now I'm saving the record with those number types embedded. Okay, for the next Dataverse data type, I wanted to have a look at the date and time. Fortunately, there's less options to go through here, and these ones are pretty self-explanatory. But the date and time obviously stores a specific date and a time value, so it's used for precise events or for having timestamps. Whereas date only stores the date, let's say for when an event would be on a specific day without a set time. Like we did before, let's have a look at how these look like in Dataverse. All right, so the date and time field, there's one particular field of interest in here which we're going to take a look at, which you find inside the advanced options, which is called the time zone adjustment field. So just to explain in this, there's a couple of different types of adjustment options you can make to the time zone. There in the date and time option, there are only 2 settings that you can have. which is that you can have the user local. And what this means is that when that option's selected, the date and time values will be adjusted based on the time zone setting of the individual user accessing the data. This means, for example, if the user is in New York and enters the time and data, a user in London will see that time adjusted to their local time. Or you can have time zone independent, and as soon as you select the time zone independent, then it will basically grey out the box, because what this will do is it will store the date and time without adjusting for the time zone, and it will represent an absolute moment in time regardless of where the users are or what their local time settings might be, and then they'll see the exact same date and time value regardless of what's saved in that one. So this is quite important to note. In the date only field, you'll also see one other option. So when we make this option here, you'll see it also provides date only. And this means that the field would only store the date, which without any time or time zone information. So it's purely basically a calendar date, making it consistent across all users, because of the fact that this doesn't store obviously time-based information within it. So it wouldn't be able to make that distinction. Let's take a look at how these are applied. So when we come back into the form, we can basically see that you have the date and time. It's pretty self-explanatory, this field. You just select a time and a date. So 10 a.m. on the 29th of October. And then we're going to do the same on the date as well. All right, now let's look at lookups. Let's look at lookups. That's a good one, isn't it? So first of these lookup data types is called a lookup. Surprisingly, I think you could have to pay €1 for every time I say lookup. A lookup is a reference to another record from a different table, allowing for the establishment of a relationship. So as soon as you create a Dataverse data type, which is a lookup, a new column, then it will create a relationship between the table where you created it and the table where the data is stored. Additionally, there is a customer lookup, and this is a special type of lookup that can refer to either a contact or an account, and it enables a flexible reference to entities commonly used to represent customers. So it's kind of a pre-baked lookup specific to customer-based information. Let's go into Dataverse and take a look at these. All right, so the first one of these is obviously the lookup, and in this case I'm calling this the user, because what I've done is I've built a relationship on this one, but to the related table being the user table. If we take a look, you'll see that we create a new relationship that's built down here, which you can see is the relationship here between the new table, the lookup user, and the system user table. The second column is the customer column. You'll see in here that there aren't any specific tables that you would pick to relate the data to, but it builds automatically two relationships out of the box with this specific data type to both the account table and also to the contact table. Let's take a look at what it looks like when we put the data in for these. So we come back into the form, and in this case we're looking up for a user. As you can see, I'm able to discover the user from myself, of course, and that I'm online. The second lookup is for the customer, and as soon as I hit this one to select the data, you'll see it asks me to browse or create a new record. I'm going to search, and you'll see when it searches, it finds a test account that I created earlier. What you can see is that you can filter the results from the accounts or the contact tables, so that you can get the results that you want to see in this particular box. The next Dataverse data type is choice. This is probably one of my favorite ones. There are two options for choice. The first one is you can use a choice data type, which allows users to select from a predefined set of options or values. And the second one is a yes or no, like a binary choice that you'd be able to make. It would typically be used if you're referring to something that's a yes or no or a true or false, for example. As we always do, let's take a look at these in Dataverse. The first option we're going to select is the choice, and when you're configuring this, there's a couple of things to note. The first one here is when it says sync with a global choice. This is when you're creating the column for the first time. You can either choose to create a list of choices that can be used across other columns or other data types. Or you can have one that's just a local choice that would be used within this particular table. So it depends on what your use case might be. You might have, let's say, if you have a set of products that are across the entire span of your applications, it might be that you want those to be global so that they can be used in multiple tables. And then then you're not having to maintain it in each individual table. Or it might just be in this particular case, for an example, that we're just creating it within the specific column. You then configure the choices that you want to have. So I can add an additional choice here just to add one in, and we're going to put in green. And then once you've done that, you can also configure what the default option is that you would want to have, and then obviously save it. The next data type for choice is the yes or no data type. And in this case, you select yes or no. And as mentioned here, it's when you want to have a binary set of values. So if you want no or yes, or in this case, we can change it to false and true. Okay, we've come down to the choice data type section here, and you can see that we have all these different colors that we can choose from that we had before, or we have that true or false option that we've just configured as well. All right, we're getting close to the end, but let's keep chugging through these last Dataverse data types. The next one is currency, and currency is actually quite a interesting data type within Dataverse. And what it does is it stores the monetary value and includes precision for up to 4 decimal places. It can be associated with multiple different types of currencies and reflects that based upon the currency symbols. So what I found out during my research is that currency, when you create it, it actually creates a relationship to a separate table that's called the currency table. And what we'll do when we run the little example in a moment is we'll look at how you actually create currencies and represent them, obviously, in the database. Like we've done with everything, let's head on over to Dataverse and take a look. Okay, so when you create the currency column, you'll notice that it has a bunch of information in here where you can select the minimum value or the maximum value that you want to have of the currency, and the precision source that you want to have as well. What I'm going to do is leave all of this information alone, because what becomes quite interesting is what we see when we actually go into the form. So let's take a look there. So when you're configuring the form, you'll notice that there is a lookup field to choose the type of currency that you want to have, and then the actual amount that you want to store. In this particular case, you'll notice that I can search for a currency, or I can add a new one. In this case, we're going to add a new one, and we're going to do a currency of £1. All right, so now when we come in to select our currency and we search for the different currencies, you can see the different types of ones. And as soon as you select your currency and then put the amount in and save, you'll notice that it uses the correct number of decimal places and also the correct symbol to represent pounds as well. One thing I want to do quickly to show you is to have a look at the table that represents currencies. So if you come out back into Dataverse, you'll notice that all of the information that we were adjusting there is actually stored in a separate table that's a standard table built into Dataverse. And here you can program in all of the different currencies that you'd want to have, exactly as we just did in the application there as well. All right, another really cool Dataverse data type, this is one that I discovered recently, is the Autonumber data type. And what this does is it generates a sequential number or reference for the records, ensuring that you have like a unique identifier for every row that would be created. This is particularly helpful in kind of customer service based applications that you'd be developing or representing your data on top of. Let's take a look in Dataverse to see what it looks like. So when you come into Dataverse, you will see that you have this Autonumber based column. And it's the data type Autonumber. And in here, you have a couple of elements that you can configure. You can use a date prefix or a string prefix, a string being a number, a date or a date. And in here, you'll notice that you have the number of digits that you want to use, and then what would be the base value that you'd want to represent underneath those. So in this case, I'm going to change it to 2. But I'm also going to put in a prefix, which would be my initials, for example. I'm going to change it to 3 because it looks kind of funny like that. So you can then see what your reference code would look like for your auto number, and that will then be represented when you create a new record inside of Dataverse. Let's save it. Let's take a look in the application what happens when you are creating that auto number. So in this case, I'm just going to create another new record, and I'm going to add the test2 here, and then I'm going to save the record. And what you'll see down here at the bottom is that it then generates that auto number based on the rule that you've designed. Second to last one we're going to look at here, which is the Dataverse data type called file. There are two types of files that you can store in Dataverse. The first of them is a file or that you can add to a record, and the second one is an image. And this is often an image that you can use to then record or even view as a thumbnail. You'll see in the way that we represent the image that it actually presents the thumbnail on the record when we store an image in there. Let's go into Dataverse and take a look. Okay, so when it comes to creating the column, there aren't any real options that you will be able to see other than the maximum file size. And this is configured when you first actually create the column that you can make the judgment call here in terms of what you want to have. The second column, as we mentioned, is the image. It has a very similar configuration to the file, apart from the fact that it says it can store full images. And again, you can configure the maximum image size here. The key point is that where it says primary image, this will be used as the image for this table in terms of the record that's being uploaded. And we'll see that when we do that in the application in a second. So I'm going to upload two different files. And you'll see with the two different files that I've loaded that the image logo that I've got here has actually then uploaded as the icon for the record in the top left-hand corner here as well. The cool thing when it comes to using the record like this is that the person who would be using the application can come in and actually open the picture and download it to their computer based upon what has been attached to the record here as well. Okay, the last Dataverse data type we want to look at is the formula. This is a preview feature at the moment, and what it does is it allows you to define calculations or logical operations based on other fields, generating a dynamic value based on a set of conditions. So what are we going to do? We're going to go take a look in Dataverse. Let's do it. All right, for the formula, we're going to create a new one, and we're going to go to the old table to determine which fields we want to do something together with. In this case, I can have a look through here and I can see, let's say the numbers are easy ones to work on. So I'm going to take the whole number and add it together with the decimal. Let's give it a go. So what I'm going to do is give it a display name. I can take the whole number, add it to the decimal. And what you'll then see in the application is that when I scroll down, I get the whole decimal number, and it's the addition of the two numbers that I specified, which is the whole number and the decimal. And it's represented here at the bottom, in this case with two decimal places, because it's carrying the decimal places that exist in the decimal number to form the sum of the parts of the whole number. That concludes the video that I had in mind today. It was a lot of information to go through each one of those different data types. But for me, it's a really important exercise to understand when it comes to working with database tables, and obviously taking your existing data and formatting it in a way that you can make it work within the system. So knowing that functionality and how it works can be really cool. There is other, let's say, features that you can apply on top of your database, which we could definitely spend more time talking about in another video. I'll definitely let you help to choose that by, liking the video and typing a comment below. But I would just say, don't forget, as always, to pay it forward, to take the learning, the knowledge that you've got today and share it with someone else. And if you have any suggestions for a future video, I'm always eager to hear from you for those. Thanks very much and have a great day.